History is filled with shadows, moments so dark we often choose to look away. But to truly understand our present, we must have the courage to confront the darkest chapters of our past. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of World War II's most horrifying secrets, a story that for decades was deliberately buried and denied, the story of Unit 731. Imagine a sprawling complex in Japanese-occupied Manchuria, just outside the city of Harbin. To the outside world, it was the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army. A benign name for a facility dedicated to public health, right? But behind its heavily guarded walls, a grotesque reality unfolded. This was no medical facility. It was a laboratory of nightmares, a covert biological and chemical warfare research center where the test subjects were living, breathing human beings. The mastermind behind this horror was a brilliant but ruthless army surgeon, Lieutenant General Shi Ishii. Ishii believed that biological warfare was the future of combat, a cheap, effective way to win wars. He convinced Japan's military elite that to perfect these weapons, they needed to study their effects not on animals, but on people. And so, Unit 731 was born, a state-sanctioned project given unlimited resources and a terrifying mandate. The victims were brought to the facility in secret. They were mostly Chinese civilians, but also included Russians, Mongolians, and Allied prisoners of war. To the scientists and guards, they weren't people. They were stripped of their names and humanity, referred to only as Maruta, which means logs in Japanese. This dehumanizing term was a chillingly accurate reflection of how they were viewed, as disposable material for experimentation, to be sawed up and burned when their usefulness was exhausted. Inside the labs, the Maruta were subjected to experiments that defy imagination. To develop plague bombs, they were infected with diseases like bubonic plague, cholera, and anthrax. Doctors would then dissect them while they were still alive, without anesthesia, to observe the progression of the disease on their internal organs. This vivisection was considered crucial to get the freshest data. Former staff members later recounted how the screams from the operating theaters were a constant, haunting sound within the complex. Another area of research was the effect of extreme conditions on the human body. Prisoners were taken outside in the brutal Manchurian winter, with temperatures dropping to -20 degrees Celsius or colder. Their limbs were doused with water and left to freeze solid. Researchers would then test various methods of thawing, sometimes striking the frozen limbs with sticks until they shattered, all to determine the best treatment for frostbite for Japanese soldiers. They tested the limits of human endurance in other cruel ways. Some were placed in high-pressure chambers until their eyes popped from their sockets. Others were spun in giant centrifuges to see how much G-force a person could withstand before death. They were deprived of food and water to study starvation, or injected with animal blood to see what would happen. There was no scientific or medical boundary they would not cross. Every experiment was a new descent into depravity, all meticulously documented in the name of imperial expansion. Unit 731 didn't just confine its horrors to the laboratory. They took their research into the field, deliberately releasing plague-infected fleas and cholera pathogens into Chinese cities and towns. These biological attacks caused massive outbreaks, killing tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, of innocent civilians. They were testing the delivery systems for the very weapons they were creating, turning entire communities into unwilling participants in their grand, gruesome experiment. As World War II drew to a close and Japan's defeat became imminent, a frantic cover-up began. In August 1945, General Ishii ordered the entire facility to be destroyed. Buildings were dynamited, evidence was burned, and the remaining Maruta were all killed to ensure there were no living witnesses. The staff were given cyanide vials to use if captured and sworn to secrecy, ordered to take the truth of Unit 731 to their graves. And for a long time, the secret held. When the war ended, The United States, desperate to gain an edge over the Soviet Union in the burgeoning Cold War, made a devil's bargain. In exchange for the vast amounts of data Ishii and his team had gathered from their human experiments, the U.S. granted them immunity from prosecution for war crimes. The men who committed these atrocities, who vivisected children and unleashed plagues, were never brought to justice. Many, including Ishii himself, went on to have prominent careers in Japan's post-war medical and academic fields. The world moved on, and the story of Unit 731 faded into a whispered rumor, dismissed by some as mere propaganda. But survivors, both of the unit's attacks and a few brave former staff members, eventually began to speak out. Their testimonies, combined with documents unearthed over decades, have slowly pieced together the undeniable, sickening truth. Today, the site of Unit 731 in Harbin stands as a museum, a solemn memorial to the victims. It's a stark, physical reminder of what happens when science is stripped of morality, when ideology tramples humanity, and when the world chooses to look away. The story of Unit 731 isn't just a piece of history. It's a profound warning. It forces us to ask ourselves difficult questions about justice, accountability, and the potential for darkness that lies within humanity. By remembering the Maruta, we honor their memory and recommit ourselves to ensuring that such atrocities are never, ever repeated. Thank you for joining us on this difficult but important journey into the past. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. Stay curious and never stop seeking the truth.